G'day and welcome back to another Facebook Live session here on the MaxMyProfit page. Thanks again for joining us. And it's always a pleasure to bring these lives to you and help you understand about how you can go about taking your business to the next level. And we always introduce or have an amazing guest with us as well. And today is no different. Today I've got Natasha Hawker joining us. Now during today's live, at any time that you've got a question, I will be monitoring the chat box down here on my tablet. And that way I can make sure that if you're asking a question, I can pass that on to Natasha and get that question answered for you. So make sure that during the live you feel comfortable just typing in whatever you like. The other thing is you'll see a thumbs up button, a love heart button. I'll press a few thumbs up now and a few love hearts so you can see how much fun that is, and you can give that a go yourself throughout the live. So if you've got any questions, feel free to ask them during the live. So Natasha Hawker from Employee Matters. I've known Natasha now for several years, and Natasha's an amazing woman in the HR space, really passionate about helping business owners understand how to, navigate their way through all the requirements there are as an employer, but also making sure you get the best out of your people and make sure that you follow all the rules as you go about doing that. So Natasha Hawker is from Employee Matters, is an employee relations company and an employee expert. Natasha believes that your employees are your greatest asset. And certainly been drumming that into me, Natasha, over the time. That's your belief. And potentially, though, also your greatest liability. So you need to be careful. Natasha and her team specialise in helping SMEs build employee assets, is great at helping business owners who have limited time and money hire great people, and just importantly, move those on that aren't performing. And that's always a tough thing as well. And today we're going to tackle a really tough topic today, aren't we, Natasha? We're going to talk about the mental health issues and the duty of care as an employer for your employees around the mental health thing. So welcome to the live, Natasha.
Thank you very much for having me. It's always good to catch up with you, Ben.
Hey, it's great to have you on. Always love talking to you. I'm just going to turn the volume down on my tablet because I forgot to do that. Isn't that terrible? There we go. I don't want to hear myself twice. So let's get stuck straight into it and talk a bit about this topic that we've chosen today. And I think the title was 20% of your employees have mental health issues. What are the risks to you? I mean, what are the risks to a business owner if there is an employee with a health issue in their business?
Yeah, the main issues, Ben, are obviously for the individual. Obviously, having a mental health condition is not a great place to be. And often they don't recognise that they actually have a mental health condition. And for the business owner, the impacts are generally, they often have a lot of time off work. They're not as productive as they would be normally. Often other employees are ending up carrying extra workload. There's often a higher level of sick leave, and people resign. So there's some really negative impacts in terms of productivity for the employer, but also the big one for employers, and they often don't realise this one, Ben, is they actually have a legal duty of care to provide a safe place of work. And that's not only a safe place of work in terms of the standard things that we think of around, having an appropriate chair and table. It's actually around the psychosocial aspects around bullying and harassment, but also psychological safety, which is a big important one.
So where is that line though? Like as a business owner or as an employer, I mean, you're not a counsellor, you're not a psychologist. So when you say you've got a duty of care from a mental point of view, where is that line? What does an employer what can they do? What can't they do? Or what should they do? Should they find someone in their team is not, probably in the right headspace?
Yeah, well, the first thing to be very, very clear about is you cannot exit someone from your business because they have a mental health issue, because that's protected. It's an illness. So that's the first thing they need to be aware of. But in terms of the line, they now have an obligation with that duty of care, or have always had, but it's even more so now, to provide a safe place of work. So one, let's not build an environment that's going to help people get in a mental health dangerous space. So if you've got a very toxic environment, if you've got a ridiculous workload that you're putting your people under, you are facilitating somebody's risk of getting a mental health condition. And the last one is, we want people to be happy and healthy employees. And if people get help, they can absolutely recover from a mental health condition. And you want that, not only for your business, but for the individual, for their family, and for society as well.
Yeah, it's so important, isn't it? So you said there that once you know somebody's got a mental health issue, you can't move them on.
Yeah.
But what if it's really detrimental to their role? I mean, what is a business owner to do if let's say it's a really critical position? Like I'm imagining, for example, let's say I employ pilots or, that are driving an airplane full of 300 people. I can't just keep them on flying a plane, can I?
No, you can't.
That's just as dangerous.
Yeah, they would typically be on some sort of leave. It'd be their personal leave to heal. But I think the big thing for business owners is you also have an obligation to provide amended work conditions. So let me give you a great example. Say you've got a guy, John, he's an accountant. He's been a great accountant for you for many years. He's a good performer. You start to notice some changes and you find out that his marriage has broken down. He's been married for 25 years. The guy is gutted. He's been to his doctor and he's actually suffering from depression. So he's having that depressive episode and he needs some time off work. Well, you would give him that time off work, and that might be a matter of weeks or whatever, but then his doctor gives him permission to return to work in an amended capacity, which might mean he works part-time or he works flexible hours. And it's really, really important to the individual's recovery, and it's a recovery from a mental health condition, that they often have a lot of desire to return to work. They take a lot of pride in their work, and giving them that staggered return to work often means they might have an amended type of work program for a little while, and then they're back to full health and full sort of productivity for you. And you're going to have a very grateful and loyal employee as a result. You absolutely shouldn't put anyone up in the air, for example, as a pilot, if you have concerns about their mental health. And that's why they have, the medicals and things that they do have for pilots. So yeah, it's really important. And I would encourage most of your listeners to get advice. If you're unsure, get advice. But the statistics are very high.
If you've just joined us, I can see we've got a few people joining us now. Thanks for joining the live here. I'm here with Natasha Hawker from Employee Matters, and Natasha is an expert in all things HR and really has graciously given her time today to share with us some thoughts around how to handle mental health issues in the workplace. So if you do have a question, feel free to ask it in the comment box below the video. I am monitoring the questions and I'll get that question through to Natasha as soon as you ask it and help you answer those questions. In the meantime, I've got a stack of questions, so I'm going to keep firing away, which are cool. I mean, can you maybe enlighten everybody? What are the stats around mental health? Because I think you hit on a really important point there, is that not everybody knows, right, when somebody's having a mental health issue. And you said, gave that example of John, and he's had this divorce. Yeah. Quite often people are quite private about that kind of thing. So what are the stats around it? It's probably more common than people think.
Absolutely. So the statistics are, at the moment, the last piece of research that was done in Australia was 1 in 5 Australian employees in the age range between 16 and 85. Obviously, most of those are a shorter age range.
That's a big age range.
Yeah, that's where they do the statistics, are suffering from a mental health condition. And how I'm classifying mental health condition in this framework are anxiety, depression, potentially suicidal, and we could talk about what you should do if that's happening in your workplace, anorexia, which is the other one, and substance abuse. And the statistics are, I think it's 1 in 20 employees is suffering in Australia of substance abuse problem, having too much wine, having a recreational drug habit, which might be impacting your workplace, but that's their escape. And the statistics, though, they are quite already very sure that that's actually down to 1 in 4. So if you think about your workplace, you've got 20 employees, it's highly likely that over a year, 4 of them or 5 of them might be suffering from a mental health condition. So it is a significant issue. The other thing is that we're finding that more and more of our clients are coming to us. I was in Melbourne last week and I met up with a heap of clients, and I think half of them said, actually, while you're here, I've got this situation where Mary seems to be suffering and we're not quite sure what to do. So it is very common. The other thing that I would suggest to your listeners is, statistically in Australia at the moment, 1 in 3 Australian girls, teenage girls, is suffering from anxiety. Now, what we do know is that only 35% of anyone who's suffering from that mental health condition gets any medical assistance. And the issue is that if you've had a mental health condition in the past, you are predisposed to having a secondary episode, especially if you're not getting any help for it. But those Australian girls, and the guys have got another set of issues as well, are going to be in the workplace in the next 2 to 10 years. And then you're down to 1 in 3. So it is definitely a big issue. They say in Australia at any one time, over 3 million Australians are suffering with a mental health condition.
Is this like a growing epidemic? Like, I always thought maybe it was just that we're becoming more aware of it or more people are talking about it, but do you think it's actually increasing? The problem.
I think it's both, Ben. I think you're absolutely right. It's a bit like the Me Too movement with acceptance and understanding and awareness, it increases the number of people coming forward and saying, hey, that happened to me. It's the same with mental health. People, there's still a huge stigma attached to mental health conditions, but people are much more comfortable with saying, actually, I do have a mental health condition. But also it is increasing. The World Health Organization have said we are spending less money on mental health than any other health condition that we have in the world, and it is a growing problem for a couple of reasons. Aging society, a lot more children are surviving into adolescence, and we're not investing in it, so it's a bigger problem.
Now, you mentioned before that one of the downsides obviously is, besides their health and personally, is the loss of productivity or the reduced productivity in a business, and maybe their inability, maybe even to be able to fit in a business and deal with customers or people or just normal day-to-day things.
Yeah.
How, as a business owner, how can I provide that better workplace, or a workplace that's aware of these issues and then helping my employees to make sure that they are staying mentally fit, I guess?
Yeah, the first and foremost is that the policies and practices of your organisation support a healthy, happy workplace. So by that, you should have a bullying and sexual harassment policy. So that says that's not allowed in this organisation, and we don't want that. Equally, that you might have an EAP program. EAP is Employee Assistance Program, which is a 24-hour counselling support that people, as we know, 1 in 3 first marriages fail, 1 in 2 second marriages fail. People are going to go through life challenges while they work for you, especially if you have them long term. So giving them access to a counselling service will reduce your absenteeism and potentially reduce your attrition or turnover. So training your team around what's appropriate behaviour in the workplace and what's not, around code of conduct. Just rolling out training every year to say, this is the way we conduct ourselves at company ABC, and if there's any breach to this, then we're going to be having a conversation. So you're deliberately trying to provide that safe place to work. The next thing that you need to do is, if you see someone who's suffering, that you might have a conversation with them. And I would go one step further. 7 of my team have just been accredited as mental health first responders. Now that means that they are accredited officially to provide advice and guidance and identify where there is a mental health condition and help that person get early intervention and early assistance. And there's a lovely little framework with that. And so we're getting a lot of clients saying, hey, can you come in and help us? We want to help Sarah or George. We just don't know what to do. We're not psychologists, as you said. We're not psychiatrists, and we don't know what to do. We need some help.
I could see that being a big problem, because it's quite confronting as well. Like, really, for somebody who has never had that in their life or themselves, or even in their family, and that's still a lot of people are in that position, to have to deal with it within the employee space, whilst they're also, especially a small business, we're already busy trying to overcome all the other obstacles and hurdles that are running a small business, to then have team members that are now bringing their mental issues to the surface, and we're having to deal with that as well. It can be quite overwhelming, I'm sure.
Yeah, and there's still, we still tend to bring a facade to work, around our emotional, I often say clients, she came in and she was crying and I just didn't know what to do. And so there's a lot of that. So I would encourage all your organizations, either depending on your size, getting your own mental health first responder in the office, or getting somebody to come and give you some advice where you feel like you've got somebody who's got a condition, and just reaching out to someone. The best thing or the most amazing thing I learned when I went through the mental health first aider training was, one, how do you identify the different types of mental health? What are the typical symptoms? And ironically, surprise, surprise, a lot of the symptoms could be multitude of other illnesses or problems. And particularly around suicide and depression, most people think if you think someone's suicide, thinking of hurting themselves, that the last thing you would ever say to them is, Ben, are you thinking of killing yourself? That's a very blunt question, but that's actually what they want you to do, because that's the advice for mental health, because that often most people who kill themselves actually never want to kill themselves. They're just hurting so badly, they don't think they have another alternative. So often if you were to raise that with someone who was feeling that way, they'll often then go, and they will start to share with you. And the next very important question is, if they are considering hurting themselves in that way, is the second question is, do you have a plan in place? Because if they've got a plan, they're significantly along the journey. That potential act is quite imminent. And if that is where you're at with an employee, you just need to get help very quickly. Call an ambulance, get some help, get the police involved. And that person might hate you for a little while, but you might just have saved a life.
Yeah. It's interesting, you say call an ambulance. It's probably not the first reaction for somebody who has a mental health issue because they're not cut or broken, in that sense. But that's obviously a very smart thing to do, is just get somebody there to help them.
Yeah, we had a client that we were chatting to the other day, and they actually had one of their fellows who was in that position, and he basically said, "I'm thinking of throwing myself in front of a train," and they quickly rang Lifeline, and Lifeline said, "This is what you need to do: call the police and the ambulance." And he was taken away, and he went to hospital, and he got well, and he's still working with them, and he's been with them 35 years. You don't want to lose that guy. He's great.
Yeah.
He does have some challenges. That doesn't mean he can't be a brilliant employee.
Yeah. Yeah, look, we all have challenges through our life, don't we? Now, I can see behind you, you've got a diagram there you started drawing on a whiteboard. Maybe talk us through about how you go about building assets, employee assets in the business to help to, I guess, make sure these things don't happen.
Great. Let's bring this forward, and I'll hopefully not run myself over with my... So I thought this was really important to do with your people are on here, because this is really important. You as business owners need to build employee assets. I actually have a goal that your banks will actually lend you money on the value of your employee asset. So at the center of everything we do, and what this is really all about, is building a business where your employees, and I would encourage you to write this down, guys, because I'm going to get you to do some homework after this. Building a business where your employees treasure your business as much as you do. When you build that business, you get 3 key outcomes, which are profit, growth, and sustainability. I'll just put sustain there. Now, I would encourage you guys on this call to prioritize profit, growth, and sustainability, which is the one that's most important to you at the moment and which is the least important. When you get those three, the way you get those 3 outcomes is by 3 key ingredients, which is performance, culture, and the last one here is risk management. Now, what we believe is when you've got great performing business with a high culture, you get profit. When you've got a great culture and you've got strong risk management, you build a sustainable business. And when you've got a high performing business and you've got great risk management, that's when you build growth into your business. Now, you might say, well, that's all very good, Natasha, but how do I get that? So we've actually come up with 3 key accelerators for each of those to build that performance, culture, and risk management space. So let's talk to this one first. Performance. You need to hire the best people you can afford. You need to manage them to optimize their performance, but also actually to optimize their performance and get the most out of them. And the last one here is measure. You need to measure their performance, their ROI on them. Most small to medium and large businesses do not do this well. I can give you some formula that would make your head curl in terms of what you're going to need to do with those employees. This one here is where it comes in: training. Train your people, do appropriate workplace behavior training. This one is engagement. Engagement is the measure of discretionary effort. How do you build a highly engaged team that's going to give you 20% more productivity and 21% more profitability? And this last one here is well-being. This is what we're talking about today. How do you provide a safe place of work and meet your duty of care responsibilities? And last here, you need to assess your business to ensure that you are performing and doing everything right from an ER perspective. You need to have all the right policies in place. Here's one you need to know. If you're listeners, everyone needs really a domestic and family violence policy. And the last one here is exit. So just a bit of homework for you guys. I would rate yourselves out of 10, with 1 being appalling and 10 being brilliant, how you're performing across those areas, and in particular around well-being, which is what we're talking about today. But if you get all 10 out of 10s for all of those, then you're doing a really good job and you're going to have a very successful business. Yeah,
so it's a great framework, great way for people to understand how to go about building an amazing team inside their business. Because I think, as a business grows, it is true that people are your greatest asset, but like I said, they can be your greatest liability. So it is about making sure that they perform. And that's, well-being is a big part of it, isn't it?
It is, exactly. And most people, when they talk about HR, they don't really understand what it is. And when you draw that diagram for it, they get it. And
Yeah.
most people understand a little bit. Hire, manage, policy, and exit are probably the main ones that they focus on.
Yes. Yeah. I
This
can see
side
that.
is compliance and this side is lift productivity.
Yeah, even like you said, even with the measurement side, setting KPIs, and then because it's one thing to set the KPIs, but then you've got to use those tools to help somebody perform better.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, great. I'm glad you shared that.
Thank you.
So if you haven't written that down, you can always come back later and pause it and write that down. Otherwise, we might see if we can get something from Natasha.
Yep.
That we can put a link into the chat maybe and give you a PDF download or something.
Happy to do that.
All right. So I guess having known that we need to spend more time working on building our employee assets and making sure that our employees are, are comfortable, I guess, talking to us as well if they've got a mental issue. What are some of the things that you've seen business owners do on a tactical level, operational level that have worked really well? Can you share some sort of success stories with us of things that we can learn from?
I think what I will and what I would like to share with you before, because I think, most business owners are really around the money, what's this costing me and why do I need to do that? So I thought, let's talk about workers' comp claims first, because I think that provides us with some context. So at the moment in Australia, 6% of all workers' comp claims are related to mental health conditions. My prediction is that's going to rise. The second thing is that mental health claims cost on average $24,500, $24,500 for that mental health claim, compared to $9,000 for any other, somebody's got RSI or they fell over at work or whatever it is. So that is expensive. And what happens is that filters down to your premiums. The more you're going to have there. And also around time off work, mental health claims generally take about 15 weeks off work versus other claims, which take, I think the statistic is 5 weeks off work. So that is an expense that you do not want to be occurring in your business. In terms of who's doing it well, I think we need to change the stigma of mental health. This is not, I had a client the other day saying, well, aren't they just putting it on? There might be one person that uses that excuse, I'm a bit depressed or I'm, suffering from anxiety. The vast majority, it's very real. And so what I would encourage is people to be supportive, to listen non-judgmentally, to get their people help, and to be very supportive of them. And that will come back to you in terms of highly engaged, long-term employees. Because, it's very expensive to have people with mental health conditions. So you might do some well-being stuff. You might give them flexibility in the workplace. You may actually educate people about mental health. How do you be somebody who's supportive of someone with a mental health condition? How do you recognize if you or someone in your family has a mental health condition? And just getting that message out there will be a proactive way of trying to start to tackle this very large and very growing problem in a way that we can start to make some changes.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think as a business owner myself, it's a tricky one, right? Because especially with a small team, you're mentioning before, maybe you could give us a bit of an understanding about how the whole personal leave thing works. Because from a business owner's perspective, if you've got somebody who's been working with you for several years, they're really well trained up and highly skilled in their area, and it might take you a while to train somebody up to fill that role in your business, and then they've got to take personal leave. And the cost of the business is obviously quite high because now they've got to find somebody else to do that job. They're going to have to train them up. Are they also paying that person on personal leave, or how does that work?
Okay, so if it is a workers' comp claim, the workers' comp will cover some of that. It will cover, I think, potentially all of that salary. It doesn't cover the costs of the other person coming in from memory. You may be able to get insurance for that. Personal leave, just to be very clear for everyone, is what we used to call sick leave in the old days. Personal leave is 10 days of leave every year for a full-time employee and prorated for a part-time employee. And that can be used for themselves and any illness and operations that they need to have. It can also be used to care for somebody else in their family. And that could be a grandparent with a mental health condition, to be honest, or it could be a child that's suffering with mental health. So once that leave is exhausted, that 10 days, then they might choose to take leave without pay, which you are able to approve, or they might say, I'd like to take some of my annual leave because I know I've run out of personal leave. But you cannot terminate someone unless it gets to an extenuating circumstance where they might have been off work for 6 months and they're never coming back. You can have a medical termination, but they are very technical legally, and I would strongly encourage anyone to get some advice before they go down that route.
Yeah, okay. So it's good to hear that explanation, because I'm not sure everyone is always, I mean, you're very clear on it because you're in it every day. A lot of business owners wouldn't be clear on it. All right. And so what have you seen businesses successfully put in programs that help alleviate mental health? Because is there education programs, or is there things that we could be doing as business owners to help employees avoid falling into traps of mental health issues?
Yes. I know someone, Simone Landers, who runs a business called the Lifestyle Suite, and she's developed a fabulous product, more targeted, to be fair, Ben, at the top end of town at the moment, but I think these things will start to filter out. And it's a wellness program, and it gives employees the ability to access. I'd like to understand more about meditation. I myself have just started meditating at almost 50, and I now meditate every morning. And my brother, who's a GP, said if people meditated, he wouldn't be seeing half the amount of patients he's seeing in the world. We run a very stressful life, so I think giving people access to information is a very good thing to do, whether it's through something like the Lifestyle Suite or even just some handouts. Guys, we know everyone's really busy at the moment. Here's some things you could be doing in your personal life to help us through this really busy period. And that might be, look, we suggest you don't drink as much, even though you're stressed. Do some yoga, go for a walk. Actually, a lot of people are talking about we need to take our shoes off now and walk on grass and just lie in the sun and sort of connect back with nature. And it's all a great way of people using other support systems to help them through some, the challenges of everyday life, which we all struggle with.
Yeah. I mean, as a business owner, though, you worry that your team's just going to be sitting at the side, walking through the grass fields with no shoes on and meditating rather than being in doing work. But
look, I'm not suggesting that's necessarily happening at work. That's outside. But it was funny. I was talking to a client this morning, and I went outside to take the call and just stood in the sun. I said, "Oh, I'm outside," and he said, "Do you know what? Emotional intelligence is saying people reconnect when they go out in the sun and they have that call, and then they come back re-energized and they're ready to go."
Yeah. And I think it is a good thing. I mean, I encourage my team to go out for a walk every day, and even when they're on the phone, just everyone's got wireless phones these days. Just walk outside in the sun whilst you do your calls.
Yep.
And it does give you that breath of fresh air, because no one wants to be cooped up in a box all day, do they?
No, not at all.
Not at all. Okay. And so we're just about out of time. If anyone's got any questions, feel free to put them in now into the question box whilst I've got Natasha here live, because she'll be more than happy to answer your questions. Yeah. And this is your one and only, well, not your one and only chance, but it is for the next few minutes. If you watch the replay of this, which I know a lot of you will, and that's how most of the views happen on these live videos, also feel free to put questions in the question box, and we'll make sure we get those through to Natasha after the live, or Natasha can monitor the chat box afterwards anyway. I can't thank you enough for coming on and sharing this. I know it's a bit of a tricky subject, or it's a subject that doesn't get talked about enough. If a business owner thinks one of their team has got issues, is it best to go, but they're not comfortable, is it best to go straight to that person and have the conversation, or what would you recommend they do? Do they go and find external help to help them have that conversation? How's a business owner to tackle this?
Yeah, I think if they're comfortable having this conversation, and we've had all that education about, are you okay? That's a great place to start. And just start with look, George, I'm really concerned about you. I just want to check in. Are you okay? And that might be enough to facilitate a conversation. He may rebuff you at that time, and you may need to go back and check in again. Mental health first aid training is very specific. It talks about ALGE, which is ALGEE. Assess, approach the individual, listen non-judgmentally, get appropriate medical support. Remember what I said, only 35% of people ever go and get some medical support. Get other levels of support, which might be suggesting yoga or Alcoholics Anonymous or something like that. And the last one is around encourage, support and encourage them through that journey to good mental health. And I think the benefits will and truly be there for you. And you'll often find the team members will step up to cover that role. Because I know someone who tragically lost his wife to suicide, and he was in one of the forces. I won't say which one. And all of the guys that he worked with covered his shifts and gave him a ridiculous amount of time off to deal with that. They all stepped up because they felt for him and wanted to do the right thing. So he kept getting his paycheck, and they covered his shifts amongst a group of them.
Yeah, I mean, they say we're a withdrawing society, but I think we're still very giving when we need to be. So it's good to hear that story. It's a good result out of a bad outcome, you know. Well, thanks so much for joining us today. How can people find out more if they want to get in contact or learn more about how to, I guess, build better employee assets and get better people in their teams?
Yeah, best to reach out to me at employeematters.com.au on social media. I'm on LinkedIn and Facebook, and very happy to take any of your queries, and we'll see if we can help you out.
All right, well, great stuff. Thanks again, Natasha. I can't thank you enough. It's always good to have somebody like yourself pop in. It's great to catch up with you again, and all the best with everything you do in the future. I love the work that you do, and I think that you're really paving the path there. I can't wait till we can definitely see those assets as something that we can borrow against. That would be awesome.
Yeah, I'm working on it. Thanks a lot, Ben. Have a great one. See you later, guys.
Fantastic. And if you've enjoyed today's live, make sure you give it a thumbs up, share it around to anybody who you think may benefit by watching this, or tag your friends if they own a business and they need some help to understand more about taking their business to the next level. If you do want some help to take your business to the next level and build the business you imagined, you know where we are. Here we are on Facebook. So leave a message below and the team will be in contact with you. But we'll see you next time. Take care.